Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, and you're in for a treat today. Why? Number one, my fellow Texan Jim LaRoe. But more importantly, we're going to talk about a risk that you've been looking at, staring at, thinking about using, touching, maybe sitting on for your entire professional career, and you haven't realized it. And if you're not scared to death after you do this podcast, you probably don't have any feelings, because I got scared to death just getting ready for it. So with that incredibly long-winded introduction, first of all, Jim, welcome. And thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me for this podcast.
Tom, thank you so much for having us on.
Could you tell us a little bit about your professional background?
Yes, sir. I started Symphion in 1999, and my professional background is I'm a lawyer. Many years in doing that, but I started Symphion in 1999, and I don't know if you want to go through all the history of that. I can gladly take you from how we got there to here.
What was the nature of your practice?
Trial lawyer, Texas trial lawyer.
Wow. I'm a recovering trial lawyer myself.
Well, hey.
And I knew 2-3 guys that went into printing way back when, because one, it was pretty lucrative. Two, they figured they could do it better than the people we were buying all those services from. So it all makes sense to me. Let's go to the risk. And for those listening to this podcast and not watching it on YouTube, Jim's background has several different models of printers. And what intrigued me so much and why I was so thrilled to have him come on this podcast is that the printer can be one of your highest data protection and more importantly, or not more importantly, but equally importantly, compliance risks. So maybe you could walk us through that, Jim, and then we'll take a little bit of a deeper dive into how you figured all this out and then maybe what we can do to either remediate or protect against the risk.
That's a great approach. Okay, Tom. So just to put it surface level, 20 to 30% of everybody's network endpoints are printers. It's across all the industries, and 99% of those are unprotected. That means they've got built-in security features. They're not being used. They're not being patched. They're not being monitored. It's a huge blind spot for everybody. And we'll drill into more of the risk, but it's just a basic 20 to 30% of the endpoints that nobody's protecting right now.
So within those, we see sophisticated phishing attacks. We have Nigerian princes right here in Texas and a whole lot others. But just in getting ready for this podcast and then researching your company and you a little bit, it seems that the printer might be a much softer, easier target.
It absolutely is. It's, let me roll you back a little bit. Okay, so I started Symphion in 99, and we built in 2004, we built a configuration management database. That's a comprehensive database. ServiceNow has one. It's for IT asset management. We got in with the IT outsourcers, predominantly in healthcare, and we supported them in their reporting and asset tracking, IT asset lifecycle management. That's fundamental for anything. In about 2015, we got called from one of the printer manufacturers to say, hey, look, we just bought this services company for IT. We'd like to talk to you guys about supporting us in this effort of IT services that's complementing our print offerings. And we got in there. It was a major manufacturer, and we saw a parallel universe to normal IT. You know, what you were talking about, the forgotten endpoint, the missing it, the one in plain sight. We saw a whole universe of IT devices that were being managed for toner, break fix, cost elimination, things like that. But there was no security being done on these devices. The manufacturers were doing a great job building in features to the devices that, but they weren't being used. They were being set on the networks at factory defaults, which was everything's open. Administrator password published on the internet. And we saw a big opportunity for us. So what we did is we got the smartest engineers in the world, and we designed some software that works across all the makes, models, ages, kinds, and types of devices that fit into the printer universe, because they all have disparate operating systems. There hadn't been one before, and we put it in a managed service. And that's why I'm talking to you today about that associated risk and about how that's a complex endpoint and how nothing's been done.
I have a friend that is a data protection expert in the United Kingdom, and he says the briefcase is one of the greatest risks of any business. And I wanted to use that comment to ask you the question, what is endpoint security and how should business professionals think of it?
Endpoint security is being done, Tom. It's highly prevalent with your PCs, your laptops, your servers are endpoints, your network elements are all endpoints. And basically, in a nutshell, it's hardening, first of all, tracking, keeping account for those devices, hardening those devices for security configuration management is required across all the standards, and thinking of data protection, patching, monitoring, maintaining, reporting on all that, and basically setting up a program of protection for everything that's on the network.
One of the things I've learned about obviously compliance, but also security is in many ways, it's really culture. It is from my wife coming down from her office in the house to say, would you look at this email? Does this look suspicious? All the way to reporting it back to IT. It's a culture of compliance. And I wanted to ask you about that in the context of endpoint hygiene. How can you help a company really think about and then implement that culture?
With respect to printers,
yes.
It's an enigma a little bit, Tom, because really in printers, the numerosity is there, right? You've got 20 to 30% of your endpoints across the industries or printers. They're handling the most sensitive data, right? They're receiving, transmitting, processing, and storing on hard drives the most sensitive data. Like in a healthcare setting, most of our customers are healthcare providers. Some have 30,000 printers in their print fleet and down to several hundred. But they've got the most sensitive patient information on those research information going through their print fleet, but nothing's being done. So what we dial back of why is that happening? Okay, because no one has really owned printer security. There hasn't been a budget line item for it, and there's a multi-billion-dollar business selling printers to folks and selling the services to manage the printers, from toner, paper, break fix, things like that, called managed print services. And that whole industry is focused on eliminating costs, not adding security. So it's like, it's just fallen through the cracks. It's been, and largely too, another thing to point out to your listeners is that the printer has really grown up as like a business equipment item in procurement and supply chain. Like in healthcare, it's procured like syringes and rubber gloves and things like that. But the printer is a complex business machine that has multiple servers built into it, and it's handling all that sensitive data. It's not being treated like a normal IT endpoint, like a desktop or a laptop or a server in the data center or a network switch or something like that, with the protections that are available out there. So it's a real enigma of what's been going on. So what we're coaching, I'm giving you a long-winded answer here, man. I'm from Texas, so we talk a lot. But it's no one has really owned printer security. So it's fallen through the cracks. So we're coming in, it's multi-departmental that affects that risk, because you've got your GRC compliance folks, like the ones that are a lot of your listeners, I imagine. You've got your information security folks that are out there. You've got your IT folks that are operating and managing the endpoints, and you got your supply chain people that have been running the print service for so long. And they're all in that together, and each one of them has a different interest in the printer, and security is falling through the cracks of that.
Who should own printer security or even endpoint security at a business for machines?
Their endpoint security is owned. Information, like in a normal organization, you got your chief information security officer. That's a new title relative to IT, but it's someone who's like I had going back to healthcare setting, but it's a real important deal because they're big targets, the big healthcare systems, because their data, like financial services, is so valuable, right? And the disruptive factor is so valuable, but they're in charge of protecting that data across the enterprise. They have to have a budget to do it, though, and they have to have buy-in from the management to have a policy and the ability to enforce it in the enterprise. And that takes money. And that's been the impediment right there. The GRC people, the government, they get it. Okay. They absolutely get it across the board. Look at just your HIPAA standard or NIST 800-53 or 171. Any of those require you to look at the risk. What is our risk? And have a plan to address it. And that's basic blocking and tackling. And we see customers from California we've had customers in Hawaii all the way over to the East Coast, the far East Coast. And it's almost like we're having to tell them, man, you need to lock your front door or you need to lock your back door. But let's take that analogy a little bit further. It's like having a bank with platinum laying out on the floor with windows all around and not locking any of them. Okay. It's almost that bad. And the locks are built in. They're just not using them because they've been having this technical impediment and they've got a cost and they've got an understanding impediment. That's why we're out talking, doing all these podcasts and white papers and things like that to evangelize that risk.
Let me see if I can explain the risk management process that we would do in my type of compliance and see if that translates into your type of risk management as well. So you would identify a risk, then you would assess that risk, then you would put a risk management strategy in place. You would train whoever the appropriate employees were to implement it, have them implement, monitor that implementation, and continually improve if needed or as appropriate. Would that strategy work for the type of risk you counsel people on?
Yes and no. Okay. And let's unpack some of that. Okay. So the identified risk is clearly covered. You can't have unprotected endpoints on your network. They expose the edge. One printer, Tom, it's got such a 360-degree risk profile to it. It's unbelievable. You've got everything from walk-up USB connections where somebody can walk up to it. And usually it's sitting out in the middle of the floor with no users attached to it, nobody watching it. It's got a web server, email server, fax server, hard drive, all this other stuff in it. And it's sitting out there, not in a data center, but it's open. So they got physical access to it. It's got all these communication protocols like FTP servers, built web servers, all that to communicate off network. A lot of them are set up to phone home too. So you've got really this 360-degree threat attack surface on a printer. And so everybody knows the risk is there, right? If they haven't contemplated what to do about it. There's been no software before ours that we developed to manage across all the makes, models, ages, types of devices that are out there. So like, for instance, I could take a printer that's made by, let's say, I don't want to talk about any manufacturer, but let's say one manufacturer makes a printer with a model number. That model may behave differently first of all, the security settings are hidden except for the manufacturer's own software to access it traditionally. And that model behaves differently even with different firmware versions on it. So it's like huge disparity, huge numbers, they're on wheels. And what we've done is solve that with the security, not just the software, but with the service to go with it. So I'm throwing a lot at you there because it's a complicated subject. And that's probably why there hasn't been anything addressing it before now because of this disparity of the devices. So what you had said is, hey, look, we'll figure out the risk, we'll apply some people to it, and then we'll address the risk and keep it addressed and document it. That's kind of your process. What has happened is there's not really printer security configuration experts sitting out there. You can't go hire somebody who's used to working on, from a security standpoint, working on PCs, because a break fix person is not someone used to configuring devices for security and that are out there on the network. And these devices aren't just sitting there printing Billy Bob's resume or something like that. They're integral to processing patients, like in patient care. Their admissions, their discharge, their emergency room, their pharmacy, their every aspect of healthcare and other industries are dependent on the printers. They're tier 1 support devices. Okay. So you have to if you're going to configure the device, you don't just leave it to someone you picked up out of the contract pool to do it. They have to be trained in a process across the board. So it's a heavy lift for somebody trying to do it themselves. And then compound that, say someone has HP, Canon, Xerox, Ricoh devices, they've got to have each manufacturer, without us, they've got to have each manufacturer's software, learn it, train on it, to operate it on that particular device, and then overlay the process for the whole thing, including patching and things like that. So it's a daunting task to try to go attack it like what you were talking about with a traditional, I'm going to address this risk internally with my squad, my team.
It also strikes me that even if a company has a high level of hygiene and is serious about their own risk management strategies around endpoint tools such as printers, you may be only as strong as the weakest link in your supply chain. So if a law firm you're doing business with, an accounting firm you're doing business with is not up to your level, that you're equally vulnerable to attack. And I'm even thinking about, as I was going to ask you about Target and the hack they had several years ago, where a large number of credit card numbers were stolen. And they came in through an HVAC contractor. So I guess one, I want to ask you, are our contractors or our vendors equally important within our total data security package around this, number one? And I guess I also was going to ask you, is this discipline just waiting for its target moment where everybody wakes up and goes, oh my God, we sell more than hammers? We're using a device which has all our information on it?
I don't know is the answer, okay? Because on the wake up, we'll take it last part of the wake up moment. In 2015, hacktivists went out and hacked like 150,000 printers at one time. They spit out, several of them hit, and they were highly published. One of them was printing out anti-Semitic Nazi stuff, and somebody else was printing out manuals for how to protect your printer. And they just went to this program called Shodan, which is an ethical hacker site that sees all the devices that are on the network, internet, available, exposed. They found one of them, Cyber News, just published a report on it last month again, republished a report from 2020 where they went and they found 800,000 printers in the U.S. that were exposed. Just the first 800,000, they took the first 28,000 and printed manuals out on them just to expose those from the risk, because if they can print on it, they're on your network. They're on your internal network.
Right.
So and then you couple that with the fact that right now, nobody's really talking about root cause unless they're blaming a vendor. You don't really see the root cause discussed. We've had a lot of customers come to us that have been hacked through printers and in multiple ways, but they don't talk about it, and we don't talk about it. That's their private information with respect to how they got hacked or how they came to us, or the other. With respect to the supply chain part of the question that you asked was like, okay, so our lawyers, our accountants, our vendors, you got the whole supply chain, man. Everybody uses printers, right? Not just the lawyers, accountants, everybody, manufacturing, everybody in the whole supply chain. Like you're seeing the federal government with the new CMMC 2.0 just came out a few days ago, I guess. It's a requirement for vendors for the United States government to have a certain level of self-assessment and in many cases third-party assessments for handling different like classified, unclassified information. So it hits everybody in the supply chain, and everybody's got printers, and they're all processing the information and data through the printers, and they're storing it. So it's like, you've got to protect that endpoint or everybody's at risk. And the Target analogy that you did, that's the quintessential, right? They had an HVAC manufacturer using default admin passwords, and it got hacked. Man, those are every day now. I read voraciously, Tom, in the mornings on the LinkedIn, and I see tons and tons of just all sorts of things ranging from ransom to data theft to intellectual property theft. The latest one, they're uploading the patches from the manufacturers of software because they're automated uploads to some of those that have happened. and now they got AI to use that to go after the weakest links. We had it. I'm talking a lot, but we had one of the ethical hackers out there talks about exploiting printers. The ethical hackers are the red team that somebody hires to go and stress their system to see if it's real or not. They said one hacker has been quoted to say, man, on 40% of the outfits that we go into, we see that the printers are storing domain administrator credentials for the email system, the file server system, and the credential system. So they can go and get a jackpot on that printer right there just by hacking into the printer, and the password's published on the internet. So it's a real bad deal all the way up and down the supply chain.
Jim, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode. But before we leave, I wanted to ask you if our listeners want to connect with you, find out any more information on the topics you have touched on, or more about Symphion, what would be the best place or places for them to go?
They can obviously go and message me on LinkedIn, or they can go to symphion.com and contact us. We have an offering that's an assessment that we can create a board level report within 45 minutes of interviewing somebody about where they stand with respect to their print fleet cybersecurity maturity and level, just to give them something to get the ball rolling. So those are things that we're doing all day, every day. A senior person on my team or me to interview these people, prospects, to let them know where they stand. They'll know where they stand. They'll know what some options are, how much it might cost for them to address it, and give them a 90-day plan if that's what they want.
Jim, thank you again for taking the time to visit with me. I hope we can continue this conversation.
Anytime. Thank you.